Hello everyone. Today, Biker Justice Analyst bring you a story full of humanity and compassion. Enjoy listening.
Ex-boyfriend grabbed shy waitress. During her shift, unaware, mafia boss was watching from behind. Lily's hands tremble as she sets a coffee mug down on the counter. The cafe is quiet. The only sounds are the clinking of dishes and the hum of the fridge. Her shoulders tense as she tries to steady her breathing, focusing on the simple task of arranging sugar packets in their metal holder. The morning light filters through the windows, casting long shadows across the empty tables. The door suddenly bursts open with such force that the bell above it nearly breaks free. Jake storms in, his heavy footsteps echoing through the quiet space. His face is twisted with rage, a deep red coloring his cheeks and neck. The peaceful morning shatters like glass. "You've been avoiding me," he snarls, stalking toward the counter. His cologne, too strong and familiar, makes Lily's stomach turn. 3 weeks of ignored calls. Who do you think you are? Lily takes an instinctive step back, her spine hitting the coffee machine. "Jake, I'm working. You need to leave." "Working?" He lets out a harsh laugh that makes her flinch. "You're hiding, like you always do, running away instead of facing things like an adult. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story." His words cut deep, reminding her of all the times he'd used her fears against her. The other customers, an elderly couple and a man in a business suit, watch with wide eyes but say nothing. Lily's throat tightens as she realizes she's alone in this. "Please," she whispers, hating how weak her voice sounds. "There's nothing to talk about." Jake's face darkens further. "Nothing to talk about? 3 years together, and you just walk away?" His hand shoots out, grabbing her arm with bruising force. "You owe me an explanation." Pain shoots through Lily's arm as his fingers dig into her flesh. She can feel the ghost of old bruises, memories of other times he'd grabbed her like this. Her heart pounds against her ribs as panic rises in her chest. "Let go," she manages to say, trying to pull away. But Jake's grip only tightens, and she can see that dangerous glint in his eyes, the one that always preceded his worst moments. "Not until you listen to me," he growls, yanking her closer. The counter digs into her hip as she struggles to maintain distance between them. "You think you can just—" A deep voice cuts through the tension like a blade. "I believe the lady asked you to let go." The temperature in the room seems to drop several degrees. From the shadows near the back of the cafe, a figure emerges, tall, broad-shouldered, radiating a different kind of danger altogether. Rocco moves with fluid grace, each step calculated and precise. Before Lily can fully process what's happening, Rocco's hand clamps down on Jake's collar. With seemingly effortless strength, he pulls Jake away from Lily, breaking his grip on her arm. Jake stumbles backward, his face transforming from rage to terror as he looks up at Rocco. The change in Jake is immediate and striking. All his previous bravado evaporates under Rocco's cold stare. He scrambles to regain his balance, his face now pale where it had been flushed with anger moments before. Rocco positions himself between them, a living wall of protection. But when his eyes find Lily's, there's something in them that makes her breath catch. Despite the ice in his gaze, there's an intensity there that sends a shiver down her spine, not from fear, but from something else entirely. Something that makes her pulse quicken in a way that has nothing to do with panic. She rubs her arm where Jake had grabbed her, confusion and relief warring inside her. Questions swirl in her mind. Who is this man? Why was he here? Why is he looking at her like that? But in this moment, all she can focus on is the strange pull she feels under his steady gaze. Jake backs away from Rocco's imposing figure, his earlier bravado completely shattered. "This isn't over," he mutters, the threat in his voice undermined by the way his hands shake. He stumbles toward the door, nearly knocking over a chair in his haste to escape. Lily's heart pounds against her ribs as she watches Jake retreat. The bell above the door chimes one final time, and then he's gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of his cologne and the ghost of his grip on her arm. Her fingers absently rub the spot where his hand had been, knowing it will bruise later. The cafe settles into an uncomfortable silence. The elderly couple whispers to each other, heads bent close together, while the businessman pretends to be absorbed in his phone. Lily becomes acutely aware of her breathing, too fast and shallow. She forces herself to take deeper breaths, trying to ground herself in the familiar surroundings of her workplace. But nothing feels familiar anymore. Not with him here. Rocco stands perfectly still, his presence filling the small space of the cafe like a storm cloud. His shoulders, broad beneath his tailored jacket, remain tense, as if he's ready for Jake to return at any moment. The tattoos peeking out from his collar tell stories of violence and power that make Lily's mouth go dry. She should thank him, she thinks. That's what people do when someone helps them. But the words stick in her throat as she takes in his appearance properly for the first time. His dark hair is styled impeccably. His suit costs more than she makes in months, and everything about him screams danger and money. He doesn't belong in her simple cafe with its chipped mugs and worn linoleum floors. When he finally turns to face her, Lily's breath catches. His eyes, a deep brown that appears almost black in the cafe's dim lighting, fix on her with an intensity that makes her want to step back. But there's something else in his gaze, something calculating and knowing that sends a chill down her spine. She starts, but her voice comes out weak. She clears her throat and tries again. "Thank you for helping me." Rocco takes a step closer, and Lily fights the urge to retreat. His movement is fluid, predatory, like a big cat stalking its prey. When he speaks, his voice is deep and smooth, but there's an edge to it that brooks no argument. "You're not safe here," he says, his eyes never leaving her face. "Not with him knowing where to find you." Lily shakes her head, forcing herself to stand straighter. "Jake's all talk. He won't—" "He will!" Rocco cuts her off, his words sharp. "Men like him don't stop. They escalate." The truth in his words makes her stomach clench. She's seen Jake's temper worsen over time, watched as his controlling behavior grew more extreme. Still, she tries to maintain some control over the situation. "I appreciate your concern, but you'll be safer by my side." It's not a suggestion. His tone is firm, decisive, leaving no room for debate. His eyes bore into hers, and there's something in them that makes her feel exposed, as if he can see every fear and uncertainty she's trying to hide. "I don't even know you," Lily protests weakly, though something tells her it doesn't matter. This man, whoever he is, has already made up his mind about what's going to happen. "Meet me here tomorrow morning." Again, not a request. His gaze softens fractionally, but the steel beneath remains. "And Lily..." He pauses, and for a moment, something like clarity flickers in his eyes. "I've been watching you for months." The morning sun streams through the cafe windows, casting long shadows across the worn linoleum floor. Lily's hands move mechanically through her opening routine, wiping counters, checking inventory, starting the coffee makers. But her mind keeps drifting to yesterday's events, to Rocco's words. "I've been watching you for months." The bell above the door chimes, and Lily's heart stutters. Rocco stands in the doorway, his presence immediately commanding the space. Unlike yesterday's tailored suit, he's wearing dark jeans and a black button-down that does nothing to diminish his intimidating aura. If anything, the casual attire makes him more dangerous, like a predator trying to appear tame. He moves toward her station with purposeful strides, ignoring the curious glances from the few early morning customers. His cologne reaches her first, expensive and subtle, nothing like Jake's overwhelming scent. Lily's fingers tighten around the cloth in her hands, seeking something solid to ground herself. "Good morning, Lily," he says, his voice low enough that only she can hear. He doesn't sit, instead choosing to stand close enough that she has to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Mr. She realizes she doesn't even know his last name. "DeLuca," he supplies, "but you'll call me Rocco." The name sends a shiver down her spine. DeLuca. She's heard whispers of that name, always accompanied by nervous glances and hushed tones. The pieces start falling into place. His expensive clothes, his commanding presence, the way Jake had practically run from him. "I have a proposition for you." Rocco leans against the counter, his massive frame making the space feel smaller. "You'll come work for me as my personal assistant." It's not a request. Lily's throat goes dry. "I already have a job." "A job that leaves you vulnerable to men like your ex." His eyes darken at the mention of Jake. "I'm offering you protection, Lily, and a salary that would make your current earnings look like pocket change." The mention of money makes her pause. Her mother's medical bills are piling up, and her brother's college tuition is due soon. Still, she's not naive enough to believe this offer comes without strings. "Why me?" she asks, proud that her voice remains steady. There must be dozens of qualified assistants who'd jump at this opportunity. Rocco's expression shifts, something unreadable flickering across his features. "You're different. You have connections that make you valuable." "Connections?" Lily's heart races. Does this have something to do with my father? The question hangs between them, heavy with unspoken implications. Her father's death had never felt right. Too many unexplained circumstances, too many questions left unanswered. "It's complicated," Rocco says, his tone making it clear this particular conversation is over. "The position is yours if you want it. I'll ensure your safety, provide you with everything you need." He pauses, his eyes holding hers. "But once you're in, Lily, you're in. There's no walking away." The warning in his words is clear. Lily's mind races with the implications of what he's offering, and what he's not saying. The memory of Jake's grip on her arm, the constant fear of his return, weighs heavily against the obvious danger of Rocco's world. She takes a deep breath, knowing her next words will change everything. "I'll do it." Something like satisfaction crosses Rocco's face. He straightens, reaching into his jacket to pull out a business card. "Be at this address tomorrow morning, 8 sharp." He turns to leave, then pauses. "And Lily, don't be late." "Wait," she calls after him. "My father, what was his connection to you?" Rocco looks back, his expression inscrutable. "Like I said, it's complicated." With that, he walks away, leaving Lily with more questions than answers, and the sinking feeling that she's just made a deal with the devil himself. The morning sun cast long shadows across the iron gates of Rocco's mansion as Lily's beat-up Honda crawled to a stop. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel as she took in the imposing structure before her. 3 stories of pristine stone and gleaming windows that spoke of old money and dangerous power. A suited man appeared at her window, making her jump. "Miss Montgomery, Mr. DeLuca is expecting you." The driveway curved past manicured gardens that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Lily's shoes clicked against the marble steps leading to massive double doors that opened silently at their approach. Inside, the foyer took her breath away. Crystal chandeliers, priceless artwork, and a sweeping staircase that belonged in a movie. "This way," the suited man directed, leading her through corridors that made her feel smaller with each step. Rocco's office dominated the east wing. He stood at the window, his broad shoulders outlined against the morning light, phone pressed to his ear. His voice was cold, speaking rapid Italian that sent chills down her spine. When he turned, his eyes locked onto her with predatory intensity. "Sit," he commanded after ending his call, gesturing to one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Everything about the space screamed power, from the dark wood paneling to the view of his sprawling estate. "Your duties are simple," he began, not bothering with pleasantries. "You'll manage my schedule, handle correspondence, and assist with paperwork. My previous assistant will show you the systems." His tone left no room for questions or hesitation. "You'll have access to sensitive information. Discretion isn't requested, it's required." Lily nodded, her throat too dry for words. The magnitude of what she'd agreed to was sinking in. This wasn't just a job. It was a complete upheaval of her life. "Your office is through there." He pointed to a door she hadn't noticed. "Maria will show you the basics. Don't disturb me unless it's urgent." Throughout the day, Lily's head spun with information. Security protocols, filing systems, contact lists filled with names she knew better than to remember. Maria, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, watched her every move with barely concealed skepticism. But it was Rocco's presence she felt most keenly. Though he remained in his office, she could feel his attention like a physical weight. When she moved between rooms, his eyes followed. When she spoke with Maria, his door stayed conspicuously open. It was unnerving, this constant surveillance. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the floor-to-ceiling windows, his voice cut through her concentration. "Lily, my office." Her heart thundered as she entered. Rocco stood by a wooden cabinet, pouring amber liquid into a crystal glass. The day had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, revealing intricate tattoos that disappeared beneath expensive fabric. "Your father," he said without preamble, "was a good man." The words hit her like a physical blow. "You knew him?" "He worked for my family, loyal to the end." Rocco's eyes held hers, unreadable and dark. "There are things you don't understand about his death." "What things?" Lily's voice shook. "Please, I need to know." "Not yet." He cut her off, turning away. "That's all for today. Go home, rest. Tomorrow will be busier." Lily stood frozen, questions burning on her tongue. But Rocco had already returned to his desk, dismissal clear in every line of his body. She left his office with her mind racing, her father's shadow suddenly looming larger than ever. The mansion's hallways seemed to grow longer with each passing day, filled with whispered conversations that died when Lily approached. She'd learned to keep her eyes down, to become invisible as men in expensive suits strode past with hands tucked suspiciously beneath their jackets. 2 weeks into her new role, and the rhythm of Rocco's world was becoming clearer and more terrifying. Her desk outside his office gave her a front-row seat to the darker side of his empire. Men would enter looking confident and leave with pale faces and shaking hands. Sometimes, raised voices carried through the heavy wooden door. Once, she heard the distinct sound of something, or someone, hitting the wall. Rocco himself was a study in controlled violence. His commands were quiet, but absolute. "Handle it," he'd say, or "make sure it's done." and his men would nod, understanding the weight behind those simple words. Lily tried not to think about what those orders really meant. The paperwork that crossed her desk told its own story. Shell companies, offshore accounts, property deeds, all carefully organized but clearly masking something sinister. She filed everything exactly as instructed, pretending not to notice the patterns emerging. Maria had warned her on day 3. Don't ask questions, don't look too closely, just do your job and go home. The older woman's eyes had been kind but serious. Mr. DeLuca protects what's his, but only if you follow the rules. And Rocco did protect her, in his way. She felt his presence even when he wasn't visible, like a shadow at the corner of her eye. When one of his men looked at her too long, Rocco appeared seemingly from nowhere, his mere presence enough to send the man scurrying away. When she worked late, a car always materialized to drive her home, though she never asked for one. The constant surveillance should have made her feel safer, especially after Jake's threats. Instead, it left her unsettled, caught between gratitude and fear. Rocco was like a storm on the horizon, powerful, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. She watched him move through his world with deadly grace. His suits were perfectly tailored, hiding the strength she knew lurked beneath. His hands, adorned with heavy rings, could sign documents or signal death with equal ease. Everything about him commanded respect, or fear. But sometimes, in rare moments when he thought no one was watching, she caught glimpses of something else. The way his shoulders would sag slightly when he was alone in his office. How he'd stand at the window, staring into nothing, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. These moments humanized him, made him more than just the cold-blooded mafia boss everyone feared. One evening, after most of the staff had left, Lily was hurrying through the dimly lit hallway with a stack of files. Her mind was on tomorrow's meetings, trying to remember if she'd confirmed all the arrangements. She rounded the corner too quickly and collided with something solid. Strong hands steadied her before she could fall. The files scattered across the floor, and she found herself looking up into Rocco's dark eyes. This close, she could see flecks of gold in them, could smell his expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. "I'm so sorry," she stammered, dropping to her knees to gather the fallen papers. To her surprise, he knelt beside her, helping to collect the documents. His movements were careful, deliberate, so different from his usual commanding presence. When they stood, he handed her the files, their fingers brushing. Something shifted in his expression, the hard lines softening, his perpetual frown easing. For a brief moment, his lips curved into a genuine smile, transforming his entire face. It was gone in an instant, but it left Lily breathless, her heart racing from more than just their collision. Before she could process what had happened, he disappeared down the hallway, leaving her confused and oddly warm, despite the mansion's perpetual chill. The grandfather clock in the hallway struck 10, its deep chimes echoing through the empty mansion. Lily rubbed her tired eyes, the computer screen's glow harsh in the dimness of her desk. Most of the staff had left hours ago, but she needed to finish organizing tomorrow's meetings. A muffled voice from Rocco's office caught her attention. She hadn't realized he was still here. He'd been in meetings all afternoon, his door firmly closed. Now, his voice carried through the thick wood, low and measured. "I don't care how you do it," she heard him say, his tone dropping to that dangerous register she'd come to recognize. "Make sure there's nothing left to find." Lily's fingers froze over her keyboard. She shouldn't be hearing this. She should pack up and leave, pretend she'd heard nothing. But her body wouldn't move. "No witnesses," Rocco continued, each word precise and cold as ice. The The Castellanos need to understand what happens when they cross into my territory. Make an example of him." Her heart hammered against her ribs. She knew, in theory, what Rocco was capable of. She'd seen the fear in people's eyes when they entered his office, heard the whispered stories among his men. But hearing him order what was clearly a hit, it made everything real in a way she couldn't ignore. "Tomorrow night," he said, "after his meeting at the docks. And Marco?" A pause. "Make it look like an accident. I don't want any connections back to us." Lily's hands trembled as she tried to continue typing, attempting to appear busy. The sound of Rocco's chair scraping across the floor made her jump. She kept her eyes fixed on her screen, praying he wouldn't notice her presence. The office door opened. Rocco's footsteps stopped abruptly. "Lily." His voice was different now, softer but no less dangerous. "I didn't realize you were still here." She forced herself to look up, fighting to keep her expression neutral. "Just finishing up some work, sir." His dark eyes studied, her face searching for any sign that she'd overheard his conversation. She held his gaze, though it felt like looking into an abyss. "Go home," he said finally. "It's late." She nodded, gathering her things with shaking hands. As she stood, his presence seemed to fill the entire room, making it hard to breathe. The next morning, Lily arrived early, trying to act normal despite having barely slept. She'd spent the night replaying Rocco's phone conversation, wondering what kind of world she'd really stepped into. Two men she didn't recognize were stationed in the hallway near her desk. Both wore black suits and subtle earpieces, their postures rigid and alert. When she walked past, their eyes followed her every move. Throughout the day, she noticed them watching. When she went to the break room, one of them followed at a distance. When she stepped out for lunch, they tracked her progress across the street to the cafe. During a quiet moment, she gathered her courage and knocked on Rocco's door. His deep voice called for her to enter. "The men in the hallway," she started, her voice smaller than she intended. "Are they? They're here for security," he cut her off, not looking up from his papers. "Nothing for you to worry about. But they're following me." This made him look up, his expression unreadable. Lily. Her name was both a warning and a caress. "Don't concern yourself with their presence. They're doing their job." The warning in his eyes was clear. "Don't ask questions you don't want answered." She nodded, retreating from his office with the distinct feeling that the two men weren't the only ones watching her every move. The evening shadows stretched across Rocco's mansion when the commotion started at the front gate. Lily was in the study, organizing files, when she heard raised voices outside. Her stomach dropped as she recognized Jake's angry tone cutting through the quiet. Through the window, she watched as Jake argued with Rocco's security guards, his face red with fury. To her surprise, Rocco emerged from his office, calm and collected, and gave a slight nod to his men. The gates opened. Lily's hands trembled as she set down the stack of papers. The click of expensive shoes on marble announced Rocco's approach. "Stay here," he ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. But instead of fear, Lily felt something shift inside her. She was tired of running, tired of hiding. "No," she said, surprising herself with her steadiness. "I need to face him." Rocco's dark eyes studied her for a long moment before he inclined his head. "As you wish." Jake burst through the front door moments later, his presence diminishing in the grandeur of Rocco's foyer. His eyes found Lily immediately, wild with possessive anger. "So this is where you've been hiding?" Jake sneered, taking a step toward her. "Playing house with this gangster?" Rocco didn't move, but his presence seemed to grow, filling the space between them. His men flanked the doorway, hands hovering near their weapons. Lily, Jake's voice turned, wheedling. Baby, come home. Whatever he's got on you, we can figure it out together. The old Lily would have shrunk back, would have tried to make herself smaller. But something had changed in these past weeks. Maybe it was watching Rocco's quiet strength, or maybe it was finally understanding her own worth. I am home, she said clearly, her voice carrying across the marble floor. And you need to leave. Jake's face twisted. You don't know what you're saying. This man, he's dangerous. He's probably threatening you, forcing you to stay here. The only one who ever threatened me was you, Jake. The words felt like freedom as they left her lips. The only one who ever tried to control me was you. She took a step forward, feeling Rocco's steady presence behind her like an anchor. I'm not afraid anymore. Not of you, not of anyone. You little... Jake lunged forward, but before he could take another step, Rocco's men were there, their movements fluid and practiced. I believe, Rocco said, his voice soft but carrying an undercurrent of steel. The lady has made her choice clear. Jake struggled against the guard's grip, his face contorted with rage. This isn't over, Lily, you hear me? This isn't... It is over, she cut him off, her voice stronger than she'd ever heard it. It's been over for a long time. She watched as the guards escorted Jake out, his threats fading into the evening air. The door closed with a final thud, and silence descended on the foyer. Rocco's hand on her elbow was unexpected but not unwelcome. He guided her to his private study, closing the door behind them. The warmth of his touch lingered even after he let go. His face hardened as he turned to her. You are never to speak to him again. It wasn't a request. He's dangerous, Lily, more than you know. She looked up at him, noting the tension in his jaw, the way his hands clenched at his sides. I understand. Do you? His eyes searched hers. Because this isn't a game. Your safety depends on staying away from him. Lily nodded, feeling that familiar unease settle in her stomach. The lines between protection and possession, between safety and control, were becoming increasingly blurred. She'd chosen to stay, but she wondered if she was already in too deep to walk away. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Rocco's mansion, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Lily sat at her desk, trying to concentrate on the stack of papers before her, but her mind kept wandering to the man whose presence seemed to fill every corner of this opulent prison. Rocco had been different since the confrontation with Jake. His cold demeanor remained, but there was something else beneath it now, a watchfulness that made her skin tingle whenever he was near. He kept her close, insisting she attend his meetings, take notes during his business calls, and even join him for meals in his private dining room. Today was no different. As she organized his schedule, Rocco emerged from his office, his dark suit perfectly tailored to his broad shoulders. The Salvatore meeting, he said, his voice low and commanding. You'll attend. It wasn't a request. Lily nodded, gathering her tablet and following him into the conference room. She sat in her usual spot, slightly behind him, close enough to catch the subtle scent of his cologne. As he spoke with his associates, his voice carried that familiar edge of authority that made everyone in the room straighten their spines. Throughout the meeting, Lily felt his awareness of her, the way his body seemed to angle toward her unconsciously, how his hand would occasionally brush her arm as he reached for documents. Each touch sent sparks through her body, leaving her breathless and confused. Later, in the library, Rocco insisted on reviewing contracts together. He stood behind her chair, leaning over her shoulder to point out specific clauses. His proximity was overwhelming, the heat of his body seeping into hers. Lily's fingers trembled as she made notes, hyper-aware of how his breath stirred the hair near her ear. Focus, Piccola, he murmured, the Italian endearment slipping out unexpectedly. The word hung between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Hours passed this way, the tension building with each shared glance, each accidental touch. Lily found herself watching him when he wasn't looking. The way his jaw clenched when he was thinking, how his fingers drummed against his desk when he was frustrated. She noticed the small things now. The faint scar above his eyebrow, the way his eyes softened almost imperceptibly when he looked at her. As evening approached, Lily retreated to her office, hoping to find refuge in mundane paperwork. But even here, she couldn't escape thoughts of him. The dangerous grace with which he moved, the controlled power in his hands. The same hands that could deal death, but had never been anything but gentle with her. The stack of papers before her blurred as she remembered the way he'd looked at her during dinner, his dark eyes holding secrets she both feared and longed to understand. The attraction between them was like a living thing, growing stronger with each passing day, threatening to consume her common sense. A shadow fell across her desk, and Lily's heart skipped. Rocco stood in the doorway, his presence filling the small space. He moved toward her with that fluid grace that marked him as a predator, despite his expensive suit and cultivated manners. "You're working late," he observed, his voice rougher than usual. "Just finishing up some filing," Lily managed, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened as he drew closer. He reached across her desk for one of the papers, and their fingers brushed. The contact was electric, sending a jolt of heat through her body that left her frozen in place. His fingers lingered against hers, the touch deliberate now, and Lily forgot how to breathe. Time seemed to stop as they remained connected by that simple touch, the air heavy with unspoken desires and dangerous possibilities. Lily could feel the warmth of his skin against hers, could hear her own heart pounding in her ears. The heavy doors of Rocco's study burst open, making Lily jump in her seat. Two of Rocco's men dragged in a struggling figure, forcing him to his knees on the expensive Persian rug. Blood already trickled from the man's split lip, staining his collar crimson. Lily's fingers froze over her laptop keyboard as Rocco rose from behind his massive mahogany desk. The transformation was instant. Gone was the controlled businessman she'd grown familiar with. In his place stood something darker, more primitive. His shoulders squared, his jaw tightened, and his eyes turned to shards of ice. "Mr. Romano," Rocco's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "I heard you've been speaking to the feds." The man on his knees, Romano, started shaking. "No, boss, I swear." "Don't!" Rocco's single word silenced the room. He moved with deadly grace, circling Romano like a wolf stalking wounded prey. "I have proof. Phone records, meeting times, every detail of your betrayal." Lily wanted to look away, but her body wouldn't move. She watched as Rocco removed his suit jacket, laying it carefully over the back of a chair. The movement was so casual, so methodical, it made what was about to happen even more terrifying. "Please," Romano begged, "I have a family." "So do the men whose lives you endangered," Rocco cut him off. Without warning, his fist connected with Romano's jaw. The crack echoed through the study. "The men whose trust you betrayed." Another hit, this time to the ribs. Romano doubled over, gasping. Lily's heart hammered against her chest. She'd known what Rocco was capable of, had seen glimpses of his violence in the way others cowered before him, in the whispered conversations that stopped when she entered a room. But witnessing it firsthand was different. The controlled fury in his movements, the absolute power he wielded over life and death. It was terrifying and mesmerizing all at once. Romano's pleading turned to screams, then to wet, gurgling sounds. Rocco's knuckles were stained red, but his face remained eerily calm. When he finally pulled out his gun, the silver metal catching the afternoon light, Lily couldn't stop the small gasp that escaped her lips. Rocco's eyes flickered to her for just a moment, something unreadable passing through them. Then he turned back to Romano, who was barely conscious on the floor. "You chose the wrong side," Rocco said softly, almost gently. The gunshot that followed was deafening in the enclosed space. Lily flinched, her laptop nearly sliding from her knees. She watched, paralyzed, as Romano's body slumped forward, final and still. The carpet beneath him darkened with spreading red, and the metallic smell of blood filled the air. Rocco tucked the gun away and turned to his men. "Clean this up," he ordered, his voice steady and businesslike, as if he hadn't just ended a man's life. The men moved quickly, efficiently, like this was just another day at the office, and maybe for them it was. Then Rocco was moving toward her, his bloodied hands carefully held away from his white shirt. His face was unreadable as he stopped before her chair. Lily could smell the gunpowder on him, mixed with his expensive cologne. "This is my world, Lily," he said, his voice softer than she expected. "Sometimes violence is necessary, to protect what's mine, to maintain order." Lily's stomach churned. The man she'd been growing closer to, the one who sometimes smiled at her over morning coffee and remembered how she liked her tea, was the same man who could end a life without hesitation. The dichotomy made her head spin. She looked up at him, searching his face for any sign of remorse, any crack in his armor. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, something flickered there. Not quite regret, but perhaps a desire for her understanding. It made her chest ache in a way she couldn't explain. Her hands trembled in her lap as nausea rolled through her, but beneath the horror and fear was something else. A fierce, confusing loyalty she couldn't shake. This was who he was, what his world demanded. And somehow, despite everything she'd just witnessed, she couldn't make herself run away. The clock on Rocco's office wall ticked past midnight as Lily sorted through another stack of invoices. Her eyes burned from staring at numbers, but she couldn't leave. Not when Rocco was finally showing signs of opening up to her. He sat behind his desk, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up to reveal the intricate tattoos that mapped his past. The amber liquid in his crystal glass caught the dim lamplight as he swirled it, lost in thought. "My father built this empire from nothing," he said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. His voice was quieter than usual, almost reflective. "He taught me everything, how to fight, how to lead, how to survive." Lily set down her pen, giving him her full attention. These moments of vulnerability from him were rare, precious things. "But he never taught me who to trust." Rocco's jaw tightened. "That was a lesson I had to learn the hard way." He stood, moving to the window that overlooked the sprawling grounds of his estate. The moonlight carved shadows across his face, highlighting the scar that ran along his jaw, a reminder of past betrayals. 2 years ago, my closest friend Marco tried to take everything from me. His fingers tightened around the glass. We grew up together, trained together. He was like a brother. Rocco's laugh was bitter, hollow. He waited until I was vulnerable, then struck, convinced half my men to turn against me. Lily's heart ached at the pain in his voice. She'd seen glimpses of his loneliness before, but never this raw honesty. "What happened?" she asked softly. "I survived." His words were sharp with remembered rage. "But the price was high. Good men died, men who'd been loyal to my father. Their blood is on my hands because I was blind to Marco's betrayal." He turned back to face her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "That's why I keep people at arm's length now. Trust is a luxury I can't afford." Lily stood, drawn to him by some force she couldn't explain. Is that why you're telling me this? To warn me away? No. He set down his glass, taking a step toward her. I'm telling you because you're different. You've seen the worst of me, the violence, the darkness, and you're still here. The air between them felt charged, electric. Lily's heart pounded as he continued. My mother died when I was young, cancer. His voice softened with old grief. My father, he changed after that, became harder, colder. He taught me that emotions were weakness, that love would get me killed. But you don't believe that, Lily said, surprising herself with her certainty. I did, for a long time. He moved closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with whiskey. Until you started working here. The way you care about your family, how fiercely you protect them. It reminded me that some things are worth the risk. His confession hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Lily saw past his carefully constructed walls now, saw the lonely boy who'd lost his mother, the young man betrayed by his best friend, the leader carrying the weight of so many lives on his shoulders. Everyone expects me to be this untouchable force, he continued, running a hand through his dark hair. They want the brutal boss, the merciless killer. Nobody sees... He trailed off, vulnerability flickering across his face. The man beneath it all? Lily finished softly. His eyes met hers, and something shifted in them. A crack in his armor, a glimpse of the real Rocco DeLuca. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with surprising gentleness. Thank you, he murmured, for listening, for seeing me. Lily leaned into his touch, understanding dawning in her heart. This wasn't just the dangerous mafia boss who'd upended her life. This was a man who'd been shaped by loss and betrayal, who'd built walls to protect himself from more pain. And somehow, incredibly, he was letting her see behind them. The grandfather clock in Rocco's office chimed 11, its deep resonance echoing through the room. Lily's fingers traced the edge of her father's old watch, the only thing she had left of him. The late hour and Rocco's earlier vulnerability gave her courage. My father, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. What really happened to him? Rocco stilled behind his desk, his shoulders tensing. The warmth from their earlier conversation disappeared, replaced by something heavier, darker. He set down his pen with deliberate slowness. Why ask now? His voice was controlled, measured. Because you knew him. You've hinted at it before. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. The police said it was a robbery gone wrong, but nothing was taken. His watch, his wallet, everything was still there. Rocco stood, his movements fluid despite the lateness of the hour. He walked to the bar cart, pouring 2 glasses of whiskey. The liquid glowed amber in the low light as he handed one to her. Your father was a good man, he said finally, leaning against his desk. Loyal. Too loyal sometimes. Lily's fingers tightened around the glass. To your family? Yes. His jaw clenched. He worked for my father, handled certain sensitive matters, financial ones mostly. He was trusted. Then why? Her voice cracked. Why did he die? Rocco's eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. Because he discovered something he shouldn't have. Something about Marco's betrayal before it happened. He tried to warn us. The whiskey burned Lily's throat as she took a sip, trying to steady herself. Marco killed him? Not directly. Rocco's knuckles whitened around his glass. But yes, he was responsible. Your father's death was the first move in a game I didn't know we were playing. By the time I understood what was happening, it was too late. Tears stung Lily's eyes. And you never told us? Let us believe it was just some random act of violence? It was safer that way. His voice softened slightly. Your family was already grieving. Knowing the truth would have put you in danger. And now, she set down her glass, standing to face him. Is that why I'm here? Some kind of debt you're repaying? There is a debt, he admitted, pushing away from the desk. But that's not why you're here. He moved closer, and Lily fought the urge to step back. The air felt thick with tension and unspoken truths. Your father saved lives that day. His warning, though it came too late to save him, helped me prepare. Without it, Marco's betrayal would have succeeded. Rocco's eyes burned into hers. I owe your family a debt I can never fully repay. But protecting you isn't about that debt. Then what is it about? Lily's voice trembled. You. He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek with surprising gentleness. Your strength, your loyalty, the way you see past what I am to who I am. You're not a pawn, Lily. You never were. She turned away, overwhelmed by the revelation about her father, by Rocco's touch, by everything. Her legs felt unsteady as she moved toward the door. I need time to process this, she whispered. Before she could reach the handle, Rocco's hand caught her arm. His touch was firm but not painful, his body close enough that she could feel his warmth. You belong to me now, Lily, he said, his voice low and intense. Don't forget that. The autumn chill crept through Rocco's mansion, but the cold Lily felt had nothing to do with the weather. Something was wrong. She'd noticed it in the tight lines around Rocco's mouth, the way his men whispered in corners, and how security had doubled overnight. At first it was small things. A shipment went missing. A deal fell through. But then Angelo, one of Rocco's most trusted captains, disappeared without a trace. 3 days later, they found his car abandoned at the pier, blood on the steering wheel. Lily watched Rocco retreat into himself, spending long hours in his office with the door locked. When she brought him coffee, his usual intensity was replaced by a distracted coldness that made her chest ache. The tender moments they'd shared seemed to evaporate like morning mist. Everything okay? She asked one morning, setting his espresso on his desk. His eyes flickered to hers, then away. Fine. But it wasn't fine. That afternoon, she overheard Marco, Rocco's second-in-command, arguing with someone on the phone in rapid Italian. Though she couldn't understand the words, the tension in his voice was unmistakable. The puzzle pieces started falling into place. Someone was feeding information to Rocco's enemies. The missing shipment, Angelo's disappearance, they weren't random events. They were calculated moves in a dangerous game. Lily began paying closer attention. She noticed how certain meetings were followed by problems, how specific information seemed to leak at precisely the wrong moment. The betrayal had to be coming from someone close, someone with access to Rocco's inner circle. One evening, as she organized files in Rocco's office, she found a crumpled note in the trash. The handwriting was familiar. She'd seen it before on documents crossing her desk. It contained meeting times and locations, dates that matched with recent attacks on Rocco's businesses. Her heart raced as she smoothed out the paper. Before she could study it further, voices approached the office. She quickly shoved the note in her pocket and pretended to be busy with the filing cabinet. Rocco entered with 3 of his most trusted men. Their faces were grim, their voices low and urgent. They didn't acknowledge her presence. She was part of the furniture to them, invisible. The Russians are moving against us, one man said. They knew exactly when to hit the warehouse. Impossible, another argued. That information was only discussed in this room. Rocco's voice cut through the debate like a knife. Then we know what that means. The implications hung heavy in the air. Lily's fingers trembled as she organized papers, trying to appear busy while her mind raced. She couldn't stay silent anymore. After the men left, she closed the office door and turned to Rocco. His face was carved from stone, dangerous and distant. "Someone's betraying you," she said quietly. His head snapped up, eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" "I'm not blind, Rocco." She pulled the crumpled note from her pocket. "And I'm not stupid. Someone close to you is working with your enemies." He crossed the room in 3 long strides, snatching the paper from her hand. His eyes scanned it, jaw clenching. "Where did you get this?" "Your trash can." She met his gaze steadily. "The handwriting, I've seen it before. Someone in your inner circle is—" "Stop." His voice was lethal, barely controlled. "This isn't your concern." "It is my concern," she insisted. "I work for you. I see things. And what I'm seeing is someone systematically trying to destroy everything you've built." The silence stretched between them, thick with tension. Finally, Rocco's shoulders slumped slightly, the first sign of weakness she'd seen in days. "Yes," he admitted, his voice low and dangerous. "There's a mole. Someone I trusted is working with the Russians, trying to tear apart my family from the inside." His fist clenched around the paper, knuckles white. "And when I find out who it is, there won't be enough left of them to fill a matchbox." The mahogany doors of Rocco's study burst open. 2 of his men dragged in Carlo Visconti, once Rocco's trusted advisor, now trembling and pleading. His expensive suit was torn, blood trickling from his split lip. Lily froze by the filing cabinet, her hands clutching a stack of papers. "Please, Rocco," Carlo sobbed. "It's not what you think." Rocco stood behind his desk, his face a mask of cold fury. 3 weeks of surveillance, Carlo. We have recordings, bank statements, every piece of information you sold to the Russians." Lily's stomach churned. Carlo had been kind to her, always greeting her with a warm smile and asking about her mother. Now, on his knees, he looked nothing like the confident man who'd walked these halls just days ago. "They threatened my family," Carlo whimpered. "My daughter. I protected your family." Rocco's fist slammed onto the desk, making Lily jump. "I gave you everything. Position, power, trust." His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "And you spat on it all." Lily wanted to look away, but couldn't. The scene before her was like a horrific car crash, terrible but impossible to ignore. Carlo's eyes darted around the room, finally landing on her. "Lily," he pleaded, Tell him how they threatened me, how they—" "Don't speak to her." Rocco's words cut through the air like a blade. He moved around the desk with predatory grace. "Your lies won't save you now." More men filed into the room. Marco, Antonio, and others whose names Lily didn't know. Their faces were grim, eyes hard. They formed a circle around Carlo, silent witnesses to what was about to happen. "The Russians knew about Angela's safe house," Rocco continued, his voice terrifyingly calm. "They knew about the shipment routes, the backup plans, everything we discussed in private." He crouched down to Carlo's level. "Your betrayal got 3 of my men killed." Carlo's face crumpled. "I never meant—" "Shut up!" Rocco straightened, adjusting his cufflinks with deliberate precision. "Marco, show him what we found at his house." Marco stepped forward, dropping a stack of papers in front of Carlo. Bank statements, phone records, encrypted messages, all proof of his treachery. Carlo's shoulders sagged in defeat. "My daughter," he whispered. "Please, just spare my daughter." Something flickered across Rocco's face, a moment of humanity quickly masked by cold resolve. "Unlike you, I don't hurt innocent children. Your family will be taken care of." His hand moved to his jacket. "But you, Carlo, you signed your death warrant the moment you betrayed this family." Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. She knew what was coming, knew she should leave, but her feet wouldn't move. The air in the room grew thick with tension. Any last words? Rocco asked, his voice devoid of emotion. Carlo looked up, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry. I was weak. The gunshot was deafening in the confined space. Carlo slumped forward, a small red hole in his forehead, his eyes still open in eternal surprise. Lily bit back a scream, the stack of papers slipping from her nerveless fingers and scattering across the floor. The room erupted into motion. Men moved efficiently, wrapping Carlo's body in plastic, cleaning up evidence. Through it all, Rocco stood motionless, the gun still warm in his hand. Finally, he turned to Lily. Their eyes met across the chaos, and she saw something there that made her blood run cold. Not remorse or guilt, but absolute certainty. This was his world, brutal and unforgiving, and now it was hers too. Without a word, Rocco holstered his weapon and walked out, leaving Lily alone with the echo of the gunshot still ringing in her ears and the knowledge that she could never unsee what she'd witnessed. The line between her old life and this new reality had been drawn in blood, and there was no going back. The evening shadows stretched across Rocco's mansion like dark fingers reaching for prey. Lily sat alone in her office, organizing files when the security alarm buzzed. Through the window she saw Jake's familiar figure stumbling through the front gates, pushing past the guards who tried to stop him. Her heart rate spiked. This wasn't like his previous visits. There was something wild, desperate in his movements. Within minutes, his heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway. "Lily!" Jake's voice boomed as he burst through her office door. The stench of alcohol hit her before she could respond. "You think you can hide here forever? Get out, Jake!" Her voice shook despite her attempt at firmness. "You're not supposed to be here." He laughed, a harsh sound that made her flinch. "Oh, I've got every right to be here. Been doing some digging about your dear old dad." He swayed slightly, bracing himself against her desk. "You want to know what kind of man he really was?" Ice spread through Lily's veins. "What are you talking about?" "Your father wasn't some innocent victim." Jake's bloodshot eyes gleamed with malicious triumph. "He was deep in this world, deeper than you know. The things he did." He leaned closer, his breath hot on her face. "The people he killed." "You're lying." But uncertainty crept into her voice. Her father's death had always been surrounded by mystery, and Rocco's evasiveness about their connection. "Am I?" Jake pulled out his phone, waving it in her face. "Got proof right here. Documents, photos, everything. Wonder what the police would make of it all? Or better yet, the press?" Lily's hands trembled as she reached for her own phone. Rocco wasn't answering. None of his men were in sight. They must be dealing with the security breach at the gates. "What do you want?" she whispered. "You." Jake's face softened into something almost tender, more frightening than his anger. "Come home with me, Lily. Leave all this." His gesture encompassed the luxury around them. "Or I start making calls." Panic clawed at her chest. Her father's reputation, her family's peace, everything hung in the balance. And Rocco, who might have protected her, was nowhere to be found. "I'll give you 3 minutes to decide." Jake settled into a chair, watching her with predatory focus. Tick-tock. Lily's mind raced. She couldn't leave with him. The thought of being under his control again made her physically ill. But if what he said about her father was true... 2 minutes, Jake called out, enjoying her distress. The walls seemed to close in. Her breathing became shallow, spots dancing at the edges of her vision. Just as her knees began to buckle, a familiar voice cut through her panic. "Time's up." Rocco stood in the doorway, his presence filling the room like a gathering storm. Jake jumped to his feet, fumbling for his phone, but Rocco was faster. In 2 strides, he had Jake pinned against the wall, the phone clattering to the floor. "I warned you," Rocco said softly, dangerously. "She's off limits." "I know things," Jake gasped. "About her father." "You know nothing." Rocco's grip tightened. "And you'll tell no one anything, because if you do—" He leaned closer, whispering something that made all color drain from Jake's face. When Rocco finally released him, Jake practically ran from the room. 2 of Rocco's men appeared to escort him out, though it was hardly necessary given his haste to leave. Rocco turned to Lily, his expression unreadable. She stood trembling, caught between relief and lingering fear. "You'll never be truly safe," he said finally, his voice low and intense. "Not unless you're by my side. Always." Lily looked at him. Really looked at him. This dangerous man who killed without remorse, who commanded an empire built on violence, and yet who had just saved her from a different kind of monster. The realization hit her with startling clarity. He was right. In this world she'd stumbled into, safety meant staying close to the most dangerous person of all. "I know," she whispered, and saw something flash in his dark eyes. Satisfaction, possession, or perhaps something deeper. Lily's fingers trembled as she stared at the files spread across Rocco's desk. Each document revealed another layer of corruption, another thread in the web of betrayal that threatened to destroy everything Rocco had built. The morning sun filtered through the heavy curtains, casting long shadows across the room. "I need your help, Lily." Rocco's voice was unusually soft, almost gentle. He stood behind her, his presence both comforting and terrifying. "You're the only one I can trust with this." She turned to face him, her throat tight. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "I need you to set up a meeting." His dark eyes held hers. "With the men who've been plotting against me. You'll act as my secretary, arrange everything perfectly. But the meeting—" He paused, his jaw tightening. "It won't end well for them." The implication was clear. Lily's stomach churned. "You want me to help you kill them?" "I want you to help me protect what's mine." His hand came up to cup her cheek, the touch surprisingly tender. "They've threatened everything. My family, my empire." His thumb brushed her lower lip. "You." Heat bloomed where he touched her, despite the coldness of his words. Lily knew what these men were capable of. She'd seen the aftermath of their attacks, the bodies they'd left behind. But this was different. This would make her complicit. "I don't know if I can," she whispered. "You can." His confidence in her was absolute. "You're stronger than you think, Lily. You've always been stronger." He moved to his desk, pulling out more files. Photographs spilled across the surface. Brutal evidence of what these men had done. Among them was a familiar face that made Lily's blood run cold. "That's—" She picked up the photo with shaking hands. "The man who killed your father." Rocco's voice was heavy with certainty. "He works for them now, has been all along." Everything shifted. The world tilted on its axis as pieces fell into place. Her father's mysterious death, the debt that tied her to Rocco's world, the constant threat that seemed to hover over her family. "They'll come for you next," Rocco continued. "For your mother, your brother. They won't stop until they've destroyed everything I care about." Lily stared at the photo, at the face of the man who'd taken her father from her. The fear that had been her constant companion since entering Rocco's world began to transform into something else, something harder, colder. "What do you need me to do?" Her voice was steady now. Rocco's smile was predatory. He laid out the plan, simple but lethal. She would arrange the meeting, ensure everything appeared legitimate. The location would be perfect, isolated, controlled. His men would be in position. As he spoke, Lily felt herself changing. The last threads of her old life, of her innocence, were slipping away. But in their place was something else, a sense of power, of purpose. "They trust you," Rocco explained. "They think you're just my naive little secretary. They'll never suspect." She nodded, already composing the emails in her head. The teyas, words would be professional, courteous, nothing to hint at the trap being laid. "And after?" she asked. Rocco moved closer, his hands settling on her waist. "After, there will be no more threats, no more looking over our shoulders." His grip tightened possessively. "Just us." The promise in his words made her shiver. This was it, the moment she truly chose his world, his way of life. There would be no going back from this. Lily reached for her laptop, fingers steady as she began to type. The first email went out, professional, precise, deadly in its innocence. As she worked, she felt Rocco's approval like a physical touch. She was crossing a line she never thought she would, becoming someone she never imagined she could be. But with each keystroke, each carefully worded message, she felt more certain. This was her choice, her revenge, her future. At her side, Rocco watched with dark satisfaction as she sealed their enemy's fate. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Rocco's office as Lily organized another set of sensitive documents. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, sorting through papers that detailed illegal operations and dangerous dealings. 3 weeks had passed since she'd helped Rocco eliminate his enemies, and with each passing day, she found herself pulled deeper into his dark world. "These need your signature," she said, placing a stack of papers on his desk. Rocco looked up from his phone, his dark eyes studying her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "Sit," he commanded softly, gesturing to the chair across from him. "We need to discuss your new responsibilities." Lily sank into the leather chair, trying to ignore how her skin tingled under his gaze. The office felt smaller somehow, more intimate, despite its generous size. "You've proven yourself," he continued, his voice low and measured. "I need you to handle more sensitive matters. Meetings with certain individuals, arrangements that require discretion." Her throat tightened. She knew what he meant. More involvement in the dangerous aspects of his business. "What kind of arrangements?" "The kind that keep us alive and in power." He leaned forward, his presence filling the space between them. "You'll be meeting with some of our associates. They're not all as civilized as I am." A nervous laugh escaped her lips. "Civilized isn't exactly the word I'd use for you." His smile was sharp, predatory. "Then you haven't met the truly uncivilized ones yet." The implications of his words settled heavy in her stomach. She'd already seen enough violence to last a lifetime, but somehow she knew this was just the beginning. Later that week, Lily found herself in a dimly lit restaurant, sitting across from one of Rocco's business partners. The man's eyes were cold, calculating, as she delivered Rocco's terms for their continued partnership. Her hands remained steady as she pushed the document across the table, but her heart hammered in her chest. The man signed without reading, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Tell Rocco he's lucky to have such a capable assistant." The threat in his tone was unmistakable. Lily maintained her composure until she was safely in her car, then let out a shaking breath. This was her life now, dangerous meetings, coded threats, and the constant awareness that one wrong move could be fatal. Back at the mansion, Rocco was waiting in his study. His men had taken down a rival operation, securing their territory in the city's north side. The victory had put him in a rare good mood. "Everything went smoothly?" he asked as she entered. He signed. Lily handed over the contract, though I think he wanted to do more than that. Rocco's expression darkened momentarily before he stood, moving around his desk with fluid grace. You handled it well. You always do. The praise shouldn't have affected her the way it did, shouldn't have sent warmth spreading through her chest. But it did. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed one to her. To success, he said, raising his glass. The amber liquid burned pleasantly as she sipped it. Music drifted up from downstairs where his men were celebrating. But in his study, the atmosphere was different, more charged. Rocco set his glass down and stepped closer, his hand coming up to cup her face. His touch was gentle, but his eyes blazed with possession. You're not just an asset to me anymore, Lily, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You're mine, completely. The words hit her with physical force, stealing her breath. She should run, should fight against this claim he was making on her. But the pull between them was magnetic, undeniable. His thumb traced her lower lip, and she knew with crushing certainty that she was exactly where she belonged, in his world, under his protection, claimed by his darkness. The attack came without warning. Lily was leaving Rocco's mansion, stepping into the crisp morning air when smoke filled the courtyard. Gunshots cracked through the air like thunder, and men in black tactical gear swarmed the grounds. Her security detail dropped before they could draw their weapons. Get down, someone shouted, but rough hands had already seized her arms. A black bag descended over her head, plunging her world into darkness. She kicked and screamed, but her attackers were too strong. Shut her up, a gruff voice commanded. Something hard pressed against her temple, the cold steel of a gun barrel. One sound and you're dead. They dragged her across the courtyard, her feet scraping against the gravel. The sounds of battle raged around her. Shouts, gunfire, the heavy thud of bodies hitting the ground. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Move! Someone shoved her forward. She stumbled, knees hitting metal as they forced her into what felt like a van. The vehicle roared to life beneath her. Lily's breath came in short gasps through the fabric of the hood. The van lurched forward, tires screeching. She could hear her captors speaking in hushed tones, their voices tense with urgency. Did you get the message to DeLuca? One asked. Yeah, he'll know exactly who has his pretty little assistant. The van took a sharp turn, throwing Lily against the metal wall. Pain shot through her shoulder, but she bit back her cry. Her hands, bound behind her back with zip ties, had gone numb from the tight plastic cutting into her wrists. Boss wants her intact, another voice warned. No marking up the merchandise. Through her terror, Lily's mind raced. She knew Rocco would come for her. That wasn't even a question. But would he make it in time? These men weren't amateurs. They'd breached his security with military precision. The van stopped abruptly. Doors slammed and hands grabbed her again. They marched her forward, down what felt like stairs. The air grew colder, damper. Underground, she realized. They were taking her underground. Someone yanked the hood off her head. Lily blinked against the harsh fluorescent lights, taking in her surroundings. She was in some kind of warehouse basement, all concrete walls and exposed pipes. Water dripped somewhere in the darkness beyond the immediate area. Sit, one of her captors ordered, shoving her into a metal chair. He was tall, with a jagged scar running down his left cheek. As he secured her to the chair with more zip ties, his eyes were cold, professional. This wasn't personal for him, just business. Another man stepped forward, this one older, wearing an expensive suit that seemed out of place in the grimy basement. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Miss Montgomery, I apologize for the rough treatment, but I'm afraid it was necessary. You see, Rocco DeLuca needs to learn that everything has a price. Lily's voice shook, but she forced the words out. He'll kill you for this. The man's smile widened. Oh, I'm counting on him to try. That's precisely the point. He checked his watch. By now, he's received our demands. The question is, how much are you worth to him? Through her fear, Lily felt something else stirring. Anger. These men thought they could use her as leverage against Rocco, but they didn't understand. She'd seen what happened to people who crossed him, who threatened what belonged to him. And she belonged to him now, completely. As if on cue, gunfire erupted somewhere above them. The suited man's smile faltered. More shots, closer now, accompanied by shouts and the sound of breaking glass. They found us too quickly, Scarface growled, drawing his weapon. That's impossible. But Lily knew better. She'd seen Rocco's resources, his reach. He had eyes everywhere, and he protected what was his with terrifying efficiency. The door at the top of the stairs burst open. Gunfire filled the basement with deafening thunder. Through the chaos and smoke, Lily saw him, Rocco, moving like a force of nature, his eyes colder than she'd ever seen them. Their gazes met, across the battlefield, and in that moment, Lily knew with absolute certainty that she would survive this. Rocco's expression held no mercy, no hesitation, only deadly determination. He had come for her, and he would tear this place apart to take her back. The acrid smell of gunpowder hung heavy in the air as Rocco carried Lily out of the basement. Her body trembled against his chest, her fingers clutching his shirt like it was her only lifeline. Blood stained his white dress shirt, not his own, and his jaw was set in a hard line that spoke of barely contained rage. Outside, the night air hit Lily's face, cool and fresh compared to the suffocating basement. Rocco's men secured the perimeter, their weapons still drawn as they swept the area. Bodies littered the ground, a testament to what happened when someone dared to cross Rocco DeLuca. Boss, one of his men approached. The area's clear. We found their phones. Looks like they were working with... Later, Rocco cut him off, his voice sharp as steel. His arms tightened around Lily, and she felt the rapid beating of his heart against her cheek. Despite his calm exterior, she could sense the storm raging within him. He carried her to his car, a sleek black Mercedes that waited with the engine running. Instead of putting her in the passenger seat, he slid into the back with her still in his arms. She didn't protest when he kept her on his lap, one arm wrapped securely around her waist. Are you hurt? His voice was controlled, but his free hand moved over her body, checking for injuries. The zip ties had left angry red marks on her wrists, and bruises were already forming where they'd grabbed her. I'm okay, Lily whispered, her voice hoarse. I knew you'd come. Something flickered in Rocco's eyes, a dangerous mix of possession and pride. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing over her cheekbone. The touch was gentle, at odds with the violence she'd witnessed from him just minutes ago. They touched what's mine, he said, his voice dropping to a low growl. They'll never make that mistake again. The car moved smoothly through the night, but Lily barely noticed their surroundings. She was lost in Rocco's presence, in the way his body seemed to envelope hers protectively. His clothes were splattered with blood, his knuckles raw from fighting, yet his touch remained tender when it came to her. I was so scared, she admitted, pressing her face into his neck. Not of dying, but of never seeing you again. Rocco's breath hitched, almost imperceptibly. His hand moved to the back of her neck, fingers tangling in her hair. Look at me, Lily. She pulled back enough to meet his gaze. His eyes were dark, intense, filled with an emotion she'd never seen there before. Gone was the cold calculation, replaced by something raw and powerful. "No one will ever take you from me," he declared, his voice rough with conviction. Blood and sweat still covered his face, but he'd never looked more powerful to her. "Do you understand? You're mine." His words should have frightened her. They should have reminded her of Jake's possessiveness, of all the reasons she'd run from relationships before. But this was different. Rocco's possession wasn't about control. It was about protection, about a connection that ran deeper than either of them had expected. He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "Mine forever," he growled, his breath warm against her lips. The words settled over her like a blanket, and for the first time since the kidnapping, Lily felt truly safe. In Rocco's arms, surrounded by his strength and his unwavering devotion, she knew she was exactly where she belonged. The evening air crackled with tension as Rocco paced his office, his footsteps echoing against the marble floors. Lily stood near the window, watching his reflection in the darkened glass. His usual composed demeanor had cracked, revealing something far more dangerous underneath. "Bring him in," Rocco commanded, his voice ice-cold. The heavy oak doors opened, and two of Rocco's men dragged in Marco, his second-in-command for the past 5 years. Marco's face was already bloodied, his expensive suit torn and dirty. They forced him to his knees in front of Rocco's desk. Lily's breath caught in her throat. She'd known Marco since her first day here. He'd always been kind to her, always had a warm smile and a gentle word. Now, seeing him on his knees, she barely recognized him. "You've been feeding information to the Castellanos," Rocco stated, not a question but an accusation. His voice was devoid of emotion, but his eyes blazed with fury. "For how long?" Marco spat blood onto the floor. 6 months, he admitted, his voice rough. "They offered me a better deal." Rocco moved with frightening speed, his fist connecting with Marco's jaw. The crack echoed through the room, making Lily flinch. "A better deal?" Rocco's voice dropped dangerously low. "I made you who you are. I trusted you with everything." "You've gone soft," Marco sneered, blood dripping from his split lip. His eyes darted to Lily. "Ever since she came along, the great Rocco De Luca wrapped around some waitress's finger." Rocco's response was immediate and brutal. He grabbed Marco by the throat, lifting him off his knees. "You put her in danger?" he snarled. "They knew where to find her because of you." Lily's heart pounded as the pieces fell into place. Her kidnapping hadn't been random. It had been orchestrated by someone who knew her schedule, someone who had access to Rocco's security details. Marco struggled for breath, his face turning red. "She's your weakness," he choked out. "Everyone can see it. The Castellanos. They know it too." Rocco released him, letting him crash to the floor. His movements were controlled now, calculated, but Lily could see the storm brewing beneath the surface. He pulled out his gun, the metal gleaming in the dim light. "You betrayed me," Rocco said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than his anger. "You betrayed this family, but worst of all, you put her in danger." Marco laughed, a horrible, broken sound. "Kill me then. But you know I'm right. As long as she's here, you're vulnerable. They'll keep coming for her, and eventually—" The gunshot cut through Marco's words, the sound deafening in the confined space. Lily jumped, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a gasp. Marco slumped forward, blood pooling beneath him. Rocco stood perfectly still, the gun still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. His face was a mask of cold fury, but when he turned to look at Lily, something shifted in his expression. The rage melted into something else. Concern, fear, desperation. He crossed the room to her in 3 long strides, his hands coming up to frame her face. His touch was gentle, a stark contrast to the violence she'd just witnessed. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice rough. Lily nodded, unable to find her voice. Her eyes were drawn to the blood on his shirt, his knuckles. "I won't let anyone hurt you," he promised, his thumbs brushing over her cheeks. "I'll kill anyone who tries. Do you understand?" The intensity in his eyes made her shiver. This wasn't just about protecting what belonged to him anymore. This was something deeper, more desperate. Rocco, the untouchable mafia boss, had revealed his weakness to the world. And now he would do anything, destroy anyone, to keep her safe. Lily's hands wouldn't stop shaking. She stood in her office, staring at the paperwork scattered across her desk, but unable to focus on any of it. Marco's blood still stained the marble floors down the hall, a stark reminder of the world she now lived in. The cleaning crew would come soon, and all evidence would vanish, just like that, just like Marco. She pressed her palms against the cool wood of her desk, trying to steady herself. The violence was becoming routine, and that terrified her more than anything else. When had she started accepting these things as normal? When had her moral compass shifted so dramatically? The sun was setting outside her window, casting long shadows across the room. In these quiet moments, when the adrenaline faded and reality set in, doubt crept into her mind like poison. She thought of her old life, the simple routine at the cafe, her small apartment, the normal worries about bills and schedules. Now she lived in a world where people disappeared, where loyalty was bought with blood, and where love. She closed her eyes, not wanting to finish that thought. Her feelings for Rocco had grown into something she couldn't control, couldn't deny. But loving him meant accepting everything that came with him, the violence, the danger, the darkness. The door opened behind her, and she knew it was him without turning around. His presence filled the room, electric and dangerous. She could feel his eyes on her, watching, waiting. "You're afraid," he said, his voice low and rough. Lily turned to face him. He'd changed his shirt, but she could still see traces of violence in his split knuckles, in the tension that radiated from his body. "I'm not afraid of you," she whispered. "Maybe you should be." He stepped closer, his movements predatory. "You saw what I did to Marco, what I'm capable of. I've always known what you're capable of, Rocco." Her voice trembled slightly. "But that's not what scares me." He was close enough now that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Then what is it?" "This." She gestured between them. "Us. The way you look at me like I'm something precious, something worth protecting. The way I can't imagine walking away from you, even after everything I've seen." Tears pricked at her eyes. "The way I feel about you terrifies me." Rocco's breath caught. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped. "Lily." His voice was rough with emotion. "I don't know if I can do this," she confessed. "Live in this world, watch people die, never know if today might be the last day. But the thought of leaving you—" She shook her head. "That hurts worse than anything else." Something broke in Rocco's expression. The careful control he always maintained cracked, revealing the raw emotion underneath. He pulled her against him, one hand tangling in her hair while the other wrapped around her waist. "I love you," he growled against her temple. "I've never loved anyone the way I love you. You make me want to be better, to be worthy of you. But I can't change what I am, what this life is." Lily's heart thundered in her chest. She'd never heard him speak like this, never seen him so open, so vulnerable. You're the only thing that matters to me, he continued, his grip tightening. I'll burn this whole fucking world down to keep you safe. I'll kill anyone who tries to take you from me, because I can't lose you, Lily, I won't. Lily's chest felt tight as she slipped through the mansion's back door, her footsteps quick and silent on the gravel path. The gardens stretched before her, a maze of perfectly manicured hedges and rose bushes that seemed to mock the violence that lived within these walls. The night air was cool against her flushed skin, and she drew it in desperately, trying to clear her head. She couldn't stay here, not after what she'd witnessed. Marco's execution played on repeat in her mind. The sound of the gunshot, the way his body crumpled, Rocco's cold eyes as he gave the order. It was too much. The weight of this world pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. Her hands trembled as she fumbled with her car keys. The parking area was just ahead, hidden behind a row of tall cypress trees. If she could just make it there, maybe she could drive away, find somewhere quiet to think. She wasn't running away, not really. She just needed space, needed time to process everything. The crunch of footsteps behind her made her freeze. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Rocco's presence was unmistakable, like a storm rolling in. Her breath caught in her throat as she stood there, caught between flight and surrender. "Where are you going, Lily?" His voice was quiet, controlled, but she could hear the edge underneath. She kept her back to him, afraid of what she might see in his eyes. "I just need some air, some time to think." "Look at me." It wasn't a request. Slowly, she turned. Rocco stood a few feet away, his dark suit blending with the shadows. His face was unreadable, but there was tension in every line of his body. He took a step closer, and Lily instinctively backed away. "You're running." He stated it as fact, no accusation in his tone. "I'm not." She stopped, realizing she couldn't lie to him. "I don't know what I'm doing anymore, Rocco. This world, your world, it's consuming me. Every day there's more violence, more death. I feel like I'm losing myself." He moved closer, and this time she didn't retreat. "This is who I am, Lily. This life, this violence, it's part of me. I can't change that." "I know," her voice cracked. "That's what scares me. Because despite everything, despite knowing what you're capable of, I still—" She cut herself off, wrapping her arms around herself. Rocco closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. His hands gripped her arms, gentle but firm, anchoring her in place. The touch sent electricity through her body, and she couldn't help but lean into it, even as her mind screamed at her to run. "You still what?" His voice was rough, demanding. "I still want to stay," she whispered. "God help me, I still want you." His grip tightened slightly. "Then stay. Stop running from this, from us." "How?" She looked up at him, searching his face. "How do I live with all of this? The violence, the constant danger, the fear that one day I'll lose you to this life." "Together," he said simply. "We face it together. I won't let anything happen to you, Lily. You're mine to protect, mine to keep safe." His hand moved to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheek. "But you have to stop running. No more trying to escape what's between us." The mansion's study felt different now. Lily stood by the window, watching the first hints of dawn creep across the manicured lawn. The same leather chairs, the same imposing desk, the same subtle scent of cigars and whiskey. But something had shifted. Maybe it was her. Her reflection in the glass showed someone she barely recognized anymore. Gone was the timid waitress who'd trembled at Jake's touch. In her place stood a woman who'd witnessed executions, who understood the weight of secrets, who'd chosen to stay despite knowing exactly what that meant. Rocco's presence filled the room as he entered, closing the door behind him with a soft click. She didn't turn around, but she could feel him watching her. his gaze as tangible as a touch. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. "You're still here," he said finally, his voice low and rough. Lily nodded, wrapping her arms around herself. "I am." He moved closer, his footsteps nearly silent on the thick carpet. "Why?" It was a loaded question, one that made her chest tight with everything it implied. She turned to face him, meeting his dark eyes. "Because running won't change what I feel. It won't change what I've seen or what I know." She took a deep breath. "It won't change us." Something flickered in his expression, relief, perhaps, or triumph. He closed the distance between them, his hand coming up to cup her face. The touch was gentle, at odds with the calluses she could feel against her skin. Calluses from handling guns, from dealing death. "This life isn't easy," he said, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "The violence won't stop. The danger won't go away." "I know." Her voice was steady despite the flutter in her stomach. "I've seen what you're capable of, Rocco. I know what has to be done to maintain power, to keep control." She leaned into his touch. "I've accepted that." His other hand settled on her waist, drawing her closer. "And the blood? The deaths? Marco's execution? They're part of your world." She met his gaze unflinchingly. "Part of our world now." A muscle ticked in his jaw. "You understand what you're saying? Once you're truly in, there's no going back. No more running, no more second thoughts." "I understand." She reached up, letting her fingers trail along the scar on his neck, a reminder of his own brushes with death. "I choose this. I choose you." His grip tightened possessively. "Say it again." "I choose you, Rocco." The words came easier now, truth ringing in every syllable. "All of you. The businessman and the killer, the protector and the monster. I'm not running anymore." Something dangerous and beautiful blazed in his eyes. He pulled her against him, one hand tangling in her hair. "You're mine now," he growled. "Forever. No matter what comes." "I know." She pressed closer, feeling the solid strength of him. "And you're mine. The good and the bad, the mercy and the cruelty." His lips curved into a rare smile, though his eyes remained intense. "I'll protect you with everything I have. No one will touch you, no one will harm you." His voice dropped lower, darker. "I'll burn this city to the ground before I let anyone take you from me." It should have frightened her, this possessive violence. Instead, it made her feel safe, protected. She understood now what it meant to be loved by someone like Rocco. It was all-consuming, dangerous, absolute. There would be no half measures, no simple happiness. Their love would always taste of gunpowder and blood, of power and protection. "We protect each other," she corrected softly. "I'm not that scared waitress anymore, Rocco. I'm stronger now. Let me be strong with you." His eyes searched hers for a long moment before he nodded. "Together then," he agreed, his voice rough with emotion. "But know this, I will never let you go, not for anything or anyone." Through the tinted windows of the armored SUV, Lily watched the abandoned warehouse loom ahead. Her hands twisted in her lap as Rocco checked his gun one final time, his movements precise and practiced. The convoy of black vehicles moved silently through the pre-dawn darkness, carrying Rocco's most trusted men. This was it, the final confrontation with the rival family that had been causing chaos in their territory. The same ones who had kidnapped her, who had tried to destroy everything Rocco had built. The same ones who had killed her father years ago, as she'd finally learned. "Stay in the car," Rocco ordered, his voice leaving no room for argument. His dark eyes met hers, and for a moment the mask of the ruthless mafia boss slipped, showing a flash of concern. "No matter what happens," she nodded, throat tight. Be careful." A ghost of a smile touched his lips before his expression hardened again. He stepped out of the vehicle, his men falling into formation around him. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs as she watched them approach the warehouse, moving like shadows in the dim light. The first gunshot shattered the silence. All hell broke loose. Bullets sprayed across the parking lot as Rocco's men engaged with the enemy. Through the windshield, Lily could see Rocco moving with lethal grace, each shot from his gun finding its mark. Bodies fell around him, but he pressed forward, unstoppable. The air filled with gun smoke and screams. Blood painted the concrete. Lily's fingers dug into the leather seat as she watched Rocco fight his way deeper into the warehouse. His shirt was stained red. Whether his blood or someone else's, she couldn't tell. An explosion rocked the building, sending debris flying. Lily gasped, pressing closer to the window, searching for Rocco in the chaos. For endless seconds, she couldn't see him through the smoke. Then he emerged, like a demon from hell, covered in blood and grime. His opponent, the rival family's boss, struggled in his grip. Rocco's men formed a circle around them, weapons trained on the few remaining enemies. Lily could see Rocco's mouth moving, probably delivering final words to his defeated rival. The other man spat something back, defiant to the end. Rocco's response was a single gunshot that echoed across the lot. The last of the resistance crumbled. Those who survived dropped their weapons, surrendering to Rocco's superior force. His men moved efficiently, securing prisoners and checking bodies, while Rocco stood in the center of it all, powerful and untouchable. Finally, he turned toward the SUV where Lily waited. Even from this distance, she could see the fierce light in his eyes, the triumph mixed with something deeper, something meant only for her. Blood dripped from a cut above his eye, and his knuckles were raw. But he walked tall and strong, every inch the victor. He had done it. He had eliminated their enemies, avenged her father, and secured their future. The sight of him, dangerous and beautiful in his violence, made her breath catch. This was the man she had chosen, the monster she had learned to love. And God help her, she wouldn't have him any other way. The morning sun painted golden streaks across Rocco's mansion, warming the marble floors as Lily stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows. Her reflection showed a woman transformed, no longer the timid waitress, but someone who had found her strength in the darkest of places. Rocco's footsteps echoed behind her, steady and sure. His hand slipped into hers, warm and calloused from years of violence, yet gentle when it touched her skin. She turned to face him, taking in the sight of him in his perfectly tailored suit, the cuts and bruises from yesterday's battle already beginning to fade. "The territory is secure," he said, his voice low and rich. "Our enemies are gone. Those who survived have pledged their loyalty." Lily nodded, remembering the chaos of the previous day, the gunfire, the blood, the final confrontation that had settled everything. "And Jake? He won't be a problem anymore." Rocco's eyes darkened briefly. "No one will ever threaten you again." She squeezed his hand, understanding the weight of his words. The past few months had changed everything. Her understanding of her father's death, her place in this dangerous world, and most importantly, her heart. "Your father would be proud," Rocco continued, turning to face her fully. "He died protecting our family's secrets. Now you know why." Lily's free hand reached up to touch the locket around her neck, the one that had belonged to her father, the one that had contained the evidence of his loyalty to Rocco's family. "I understand now, all of it." Rocco pulled her closer, his presence both dangerous and comforting. The mansion around them buzzed with activity as his men secured the property, but in this moment, they were in their own world. I never expected you, he admitted, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. When I first saw you in that cafe, I thought keeping you close was just about honoring a debt to your father. But you... He paused, his eyes intense. You changed everything. Lily remembered those early days. The fear, the uncertainty, the growing attraction she'd tried so hard to fight. You terrified me, she confessed with a small smile. I know. His lips quirked up slightly. You terrified me too, in a different way. You made me feel things I thought I'd buried long ago. The morning light caught the ring on her finger, a family heirloom he'd given her after the battle, marking her as his in every way that mattered. Its weight was still unfamiliar, but right. Through the windows they could see his men patrolling the grounds, the visible reminder of the world they lived in. But it no longer frightened her. This was their reality: power, danger, and a love that had been forged in fire. The other families have acknowledged our union, Rocco said, his voice taking on the authoritative tone she'd come to know so well. They know that crossing you means crossing me, and after yesterday... He didn't need to finish the thought. Lily stepped closer, resting her head against his chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, matching the rhythm of her own. This was where she belonged, not despite the darkness, but because of how they'd found light within it. So what happens now? She asked, though she already knew the answer. Now, Rocco said, his arms tightening around her. We build our empire together. No more hiding, no more doubt. Lily looked up at him, seeing both the ruthless mafia boss and the man who had captured her heart. The two sides of him no longer seemed at odds. They were both part of who he was, who they were together. Together, she agreed, the word carrying all the weight of a vow. They stood there, hand in hand, facing the future that stretched out before them. A future built on power and protection, loyalty and love. Through the storm of violence and betrayal, they had found each other, and nothing would ever tear them apart. I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story, and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day.